Good evening. It is Sunday, August 10th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This is your weather podcaster, weather enthusiast Simcha Lefton. We have some very intense stuff happening right now. This is a rarity that we ever speak about intense stuff in Israel and Eretz Yisrael, but it truly is something remarkable that's forecasted to take place this week. This is just to bring an awareness for places like Jerusalem, also really the whole country, just very intense stuff for real. You look at the dew points, Yerushalayim is not known for having a humid heat, and it's almost like hard to believe what these computer models are saying. You go to the European computer model, it's not just the intense heat, but it's also the humidity that's going to be combining with the heat Wednesday afternoon. And even should the humidity not end up happening, if that doesn't come to fruition, we still have very high temperatures, dangerous heat headed to Yerushalayim, not just Yerushalayim, the entire country for this week, for several days this week, from coast to coast, with no exception at all. You go to Tel Aviv, to the Mediterranean Sea, dew points in the upper 70s for a good portion of this week. We even have areas along the coast in Israel which will be approaching, not just approaching, a forecasted dew point of 80 degrees at times during the midweek. This is a rarity for the Mediterranean coast. This is something which it happens, we get close to that, but not quite at 80 degrees. This is stuff that happens on the Midwest Corn Belt, also the Persian Gulf. We get dew points sometimes at 80 degrees. In Israel, I've never seen it before, but those who follow it closely, perhaps it does happen once a year. That would make sense, but I've never noticed it before. Dew points are expected to hit 80 degrees, says the European computer model and other models for the west coast of Israel for this week. You head into Yerushalayim. Let's get back to that. That's a major focus point. I know AccuWeather continues with their forecast highs of low hundreds for Wednesday afternoon. Low hundreds, that's for the Celsius system, are dealing with a high of 38 or 39 degrees Celsius. But if you look at the European computer model and other models, the Icon model as well, which is known as being unusually accurate when it comes to temperatures, forecasts highs are mid-hundreds for Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, for Jerusalem. Mid-hundreds, it's what's forecasted to happen for the mid-portion of this week. We're talking about, in the Celsius system, 41 degrees Celsius. Now, usually, the reason why it's so hot over there and highs only in the mid-90s for Tel Aviv is due to the lower humidity in Yerushalayim. The elevation is higher over there. The humidity is lower. This week, the humidity will be lower as well, but dew points are headed into the 60s during this triple-digit heat wave. Triple-digit heat in Fahrenheit, upper 30s, low 40s in Celsius, with humidity dew point levels of 20 degrees Celsius, headed to Yerushalayim this week for Jerusalem, but we're not done yet with Israel. Again, that's dew points mid and even upper 60s for Wednesday afternoon. If this comes to fruition, we're talking about heat indices. We're talking about a good old Midwest heat and humidity, stuff that we experience here, although maybe in a drought year such as 1988, dew points in the 60s. The summertime in the Midwest, we're used to seeing dew points in the 70s. So it's not going to be mamish like the Midwest over here, but we're talking about humidity. We're not going to be seeing, it's not a dry heat. That much we know. Not with the same intense humidity as the Midwest, but humid nonetheless. It's what the European computer model is forecasting for Wednesday. Drier air looks like it comes in on Thursday, but for Wednesday, we're talking about not just temperatures in the mid-hundreds, we also have high dew points. What this also means is that the overnight lows are not really going to drop much. That classic 30-degree difference between night and day won't exist this week, and that's not the only place where this isn't going to exist. We're talking about overnight lows in Jerusalem, upper 70s and low 80s. I mean, this is really intense stuff. Overnight lows not dropping under 78 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius for the overnight lows. Daytime highs 40 degrees Celsius. Very intense stuff for Jerusalem. You head off, there's two other portions we can talk about right now, and we will talk about. Go over to the Dead Sea. The dew points start to rise again, and we actually are getting Jericho, we're talking about temperatures going into the 100 teens with a dew point in the upper 60s. Again, for that area as well, dew points in the upper 60s. It's the combination. It's not the fact it's not super humid, but it's humid nonetheless, and that is combining with not just a triple-digit heat, but massive triple-digit 100 teens for that area. Temperatures in Israel this week are forecasted in some locations to go into the low 120s. When you get close to the Dead Sea, we are going to be speaking about dew points in the low 70s. As you head out into the Dead Sea, dew points go into the mid 70s. Now, one would think that dew points should be in the mid 70s. After all, it's an ocean, but it doesn't normally get that high. From the times that I've checked it, we usually do not see dew points of that high. We do see dew points a lot of times in En-Gedi, mid 60s, maybe upper 60s, lower 60s, stuff like that. But that's the type of humidity we'll be seeing in Yerushalayim, and the dew points start to approach 70 degrees again, even higher as you head to the Dead Sea with triple-digit heat. Not just that, but temperatures going up to the 100 teens with only a 20-degree difference between night and day. That's what we're speaking about for those areas. Now let's go back to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, overnight lows in the mid-80s for this week. Several days this week, overnight lows in the mid-80s, daytime highs in the mid-90s. Heat indices of 105 degrees or higher is what's forecasted for Tel Aviv for each afternoon for this upcoming week. Really intense stuff that's happening over in the country. Tel Aviv is the least of the intensity when you, relatively speaking, compared to normal. I think you feel it the most intense in Jerusalem, but the dew points are really something intense in Tel Aviv. Dew points in the upper 70s with daytime highs in the low and even the mid-90s. So we're talking about heat indices above 105, and in Yerushalayim, heat indices also above 105 degrees, but even 110 degrees as you head into that area. And then just, it's mind-boggling how hot it's expected to be in Yericho and places as you get closer to the Dead Sea, with heat indices going into the 120s. This is stuff that occurs in the world, but it usually does not occur in Israel. It's something that we're pointing out is happening this week. This is a very intense heat wave. And the other mystery to this, there's a mystery, is that when you look at the heat dome, the geographical heights are nothing impressive. We do not have that impressive heat dome of a 592 decimeter heat dome. And if we do, it's not shown on the European computer model. Here's another shocker. The forecasts, of course, are always dry this time of the year. We're dealing in August. In the summertime, it's always dry. It's just super fascinating to just look at the European computer model for Wednesday afternoon. This is another shocker. When you see a forecasted thunderstorm for Yerushalayim, it's not happening. We know it's not happening, and the expert forecasts are not forecasting it to happen. But it's just strange that one of the more accurate models, the most accurate, the European computer model, is actually forecasting a thunderstorm to take place Wednesday afternoon in Yerushalayim. It has happened before. We have gotten rain in August. I was actually there when it did rain in August, but that was the earliest rain that's ever occurred, and I believe that was more like in late August. This is AccuWeather has it at a 1% chance for precipitation, so the other days we have a 0% chance, so they acknowledge it as a possibility. But I would assume that what's happening is we have a dry thunderstorm, that maybe we have a dry thunderstorm, something. I don't really know what to think about that, but we have higher dew point air. The dew points do reflect something like that happening. And one could say, what you have to do is, if we only would have the National Weather Service forecast discussions in Israel like we have here in America, it would be something really impressive, because for all, one could say that maybe the dew points are reflecting a forecast of a thunderstorm. We know there won't be a thunderstorm, so perhaps the dew points will remain actually in the low 50s. It's happened plenty of times here in the Midwest, especially with the GFS model, where the dew points could be 10 degrees off. That could happen. So, but either way, we do see very high dew points on the Mediterranean Sea, and that's certainly not associated with any thunderstorms. But again, in Israel, there are no thunderstorms this time of the year. Regardless as to what the models are saying, that's not happening. It doesn't happen this time of the year. But we do not have the geographical heights of the heat dome. Nothing impressive according to the European computer model. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a mystery as to what's happening over there. Now, let's go and talk about one other place, because we have record heat taking place. Not just a record heat, but it's taking place in a part of the world which is also super oppressive heat. That's the desert Southwest here in the United States. Las Vegas, Nevada, temperatures going into the 100 teens this week. Death Valley, California. Here's the thing. Death Valley, California, we have temperatures going into the 120s this week. We get that for Death Valley, but overnight lows remain in the hundreds throughout the entire night. That's not common. Overnight lows, that place as well. Only a 20-degree difference in night and day. It's something very remarkable. This is stuff, the 20-degree difference in night and day that takes place over the corn crops, and higher humidity areas. That's not usually the case in a desert, but we have various deserts in the world where all we have is a 20-degree difference between night and day. And you have Las Vegas, Nevada in particular, that's likely going to be record heat. I'm sure there's plenty more to speak about as well. Just those are a couple of the highlights that we're dealing with across the world. And we also have in Baghdad, Iraq, we should point out that just sizzling heat, 120s, and Schuster, Iran. People may not believe it. It's very hard to find even a forecast for Schuster, Iran, but AccuWeather has it. Highs going into the upper 120s for several days over the next 2 weeks. Lots of 120s over there, and we will be flirting with 128 degrees. And we know that city has seen temperatures in the 130s. We pointed this out before, that when you get into that area, the Great Salt Desert of Iran, that's where you actually have the hottest temperatures in the world, without a doubt. You won't find it in the world record books, but surface temperatures are too hot to even mention right now. But 6 feet above the surface is where the air temperatures are taken. We do not have a lot of accurate thermometers over there. So these temperatures, which are in the 130s, even upper 130s, do not register as records because they're not official. The Schuster, Iran forecast to highs of 128 degrees. We're not going to see that in any record book because the closest official airport's 50 miles away, where the temperatures are 10 to 20 degrees cooler. And that's what's been happening over the past several summers, where we have afternoon highs 100 and mid 130s. We've pointed out 136, 138, but we have the official airport located 20 miles away, where the temperatures are closer to 120 degrees. So really intense heat taking place across the world. I think it's more intense than usual. The highlight over here, though, is in Israel, and we really have never spoken about, we've never highlighted Israel to this extent ever. We're 2 points of reaching 80 degrees. Forecasted, we could put a mystery on the European computer model. The amount of weather that's available for someone here in the United States, the information available for Israel, you have to go to their meteorological website. As far as I know, although it's super informative, and they even have stuff that the American National Weather Service does not have, but the forecast discussion that you could find in the United States National Weather Service is something that you really can't beat in any other country. And we don't have that in Israel. We have plenty of talk about the European computer model, especially on the Israel Meteorological Department's YouTube channel. And that's something where they're sure to talk about the very intense heat that's taking place this week, not just during the day, but even at night for all of these locations. This is something which will be record heat without a doubt. If not daytime, certainly night, and during the day, certainly when you take in the heat index into account. We have the wind speeds are expected to be light, so regarding the impact that the wind has on heat index, no impact at all. Regarding the impact on temperature,